Amen. So once a year, we have a talk, and it's about this. It's about how to keep a church we love to attend, one we love to attend. Now, if this is your first time with us, you don't love this church yet. In fact, we're just going to call this, it's your first time with us, this is like a blind date, or maybe more appropriately, this is like a group date. You know, group dating is kind of a thing, right? You just kind of go and somebody else is there and you're just kind of checking them out, but you're not like really together. You're sort of in a group, so it's a little safer. So if you're in that space, if it's your first time with us, just sit back and relax, be comfortable while some other people aren't so comfortable, okay? And let me just kind of put this out. There are some of you that have been around New Hope for a while, and you would even use these words, that you would say, you know, that you love this church. You love what it's done in your life. You love how you've been accepted, how you have opportunities. You love all those kinds of things. You love what you've seen is the impact it's had on your life, the growth that's happened in your life. You love maybe the fact you love that your guy will even attend this church with you, right? Because the messages are okay and they're a little bit interesting, and he knows that we will be out by noon. Because if you know anything about guys, when we go someplace, we want to know how long. How long do I have to be in my best behavior? And okay, if it's noon, okay, I can make it to noon. But honey, sweetie, not making it past noon, right? But you love what we've kind of tried to provide, try this open place, all those kinds of things. You found this place to be a place to belong and connect and learn and to grow and to experience all of those kind of things on a level that you're comfortable engaging with. You would say also maybe you love this church, again, you love the music, right? And you love the variety of people we have up here and the different styles we have that pop up, right? You love the quality. We work very hard at the quality that when we produce things. Maybe you love what it does for your kids. Because again, we do lots of stuff for kids. In fact, right now, for those of you who have kids in kids' church, they are watching things explode at this moment, all right? Which is kind of a cool thing. I wish I was in there today, not with you, but it's my job to be here today. But I appreciate what Pastor Marilyn does and what Pastor Chelsea does and what the people the staff that they have, the people that work with them, what they try to create. And it's not just about creating, exciting stuff and fun stuff. It's really about creating environments where your kids know that they're loved and cared for and that God loves and cares for them. And so we spend a lot of time with that. Maybe you love this church because you love that you can be involved. In fact, you don't even have to be part of this church, officially part of this church, to be involved in this church. We think it's important for people when they see an opportunity to fill a need and they want to check things out and try something out. We want to provide those opportunities. Maybe you love this church because you love the people, at least in general, all right? I'm not saying all the people, right? But at least in general, it's like, overall they're a pretty good group of people, and I love them. And there's some really good ones, and there's a couple I avoid, but that's just sort of, let's be honest, that's you do that with your own family, so don't feel like I'm saying anything out of line, all right? You love that we care about our community. That for us, it's not about trying to make a name for ourselves in the community, but it's about finding good things that are happening in the community and supporting those who are doing it, or coming alongside them to help make it better what they're doing. You love that that this is a safe place, and we work hard at that. We try not to say anything that will embarrass you or make you feel uncomfortable unnecessarily. And that doesn't mean we don't talk about tough things. We talk about tough things pretty regularly. But we try to do it in a way that's sensitive and that's not like kind of calling out certain people and doing those things. And he would say maybe you love this church. Maybe you love it because you love the coffee and the milkshakes. Because who doesn't like a milkshake, right? And I think it's a great way that, and I just want to say this out to you parents that let your kids have a milkshake after service. Thank you for doing that. Because what we want to do is make it so that your kids like church, that they enjoy coming to church. And the fact that you say you can have a milkshake knowing that they're going to be all sugared up and they're going home with you. Have you noticed that we don't give them the milkshakes before they go to kids' church? It's after kids' church, right? But you can enjoy all that energy. And isn't that what it's about, being a parent, enjoying all that energy? So that's kind of the picture. We have all the stuff that you would say. Some of you would say, I really love the church. I like it. This is kind of even becoming my church. Might even begin to use that language. But here's the question I want us to think about for a few moments today. And it's simply this. Do you have a plan to keep the church you love to attend one you love to attend? To which now some of you have just gone like this. I saw you, right? Your arms are crossed. You kind of laid back a little bit, right? So before you get too close, all right, here's how I think some of us would respond to that question. Do I have a plan? Some of us would say this. Well, I'm here Saturdays. Well, at least most of them, right? So that's my plan. I'm showing up. So some of you say, well, no, Mike, I occasionally give some money or help, or at least I've thought about it. Okay, I haven't really thought about it, right? I didn't know you had to have a plan to come to church. I thought the plan was to get from home to church. If you did that, that was a good plan. But let me ask you some questions just to kind of probe us all for a second. And these are some long questions. What do you call someone who comes to our job, sits around, doesn't really do anything other than show up, hangs out at the water cooler, takes a couple of coffee breaks, a long lunch, and leaves early? Hold it, I got another question for you. What would we call someone who never picks up the check, never brings any food to contribute, doesn't meaningfully contribute, but does consume? Wait for it, I got one more. What would we call a guy who takes us out but asks us to pay for the meal, the movie, and oh, by the way, could we help with him with his rent? Now, if you're thinking a possible boyfriend, we need to have a whole other talk, all right? But there's a word I think we would use for any of those descriptions, at least I think we would, and here's the word. Now, I'm not being harsh. I'm just being accurate, right? All of us, we've worked with people who, we wonder what they do. Actually do for work, We know what they do. They're like here, there, everywhere, but never seem to produce anything. When something's getting presented, they kind of join the team, but they're not like contributing to the team. And then they disappear when the work happens. There's always people that kind of show up to stuff, but never really contribute to stuff. There's sometimes people, again, that kind of seem to take advantage of things. And so today I want to talk to us about how not to be a deadbeat. And before we get really uncomfortable, let me just ask you all to kind of reach in. If you have a wallet or a purse today, make sure you find that for a moment. I just want you to know where it's at, all right? And I want you to know I'm not going to try to take any of that from you today, all right? Because here's something I want you to know, and this is true for us. It's not about the money, but it is about what the money lets us do. And it's not about getting people to fill roles, but what happens when we're in those roles. See, sometimes we begin to think, oh, it's about money. Because some of us have been to churches and it's like always about money, right? And in fact, sometimes we say, well, that's all church cares about is money, right? Now, there's a reason churches talk about money, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But for us, it's not about the money. It really is about what the money lets us do. And the money that you give to our local church budget here lets us do literally everything we do in and through our church. The fact that it's nice and cool in here today comes from our local budget. The fact that we have, lights and your kids have, a great environment right now and they're going to get a milkshake later, that all comes from our local budget. And it's not about, just trying to fill up all these roles, because let's be honest, there's always roles to be filled. There's always more to be done. There's always more to kind of carry the load. But it's not about that. It's really about what happens to us when we're in those roles, because that's the most important thing. So let me stop for a moment and just say, listen, if you're someone who regularly gives or who regularly serves, let me say it one more time so you're clear. I'm not talking to you. Thank you, because we could not do this without you. Now, if you're not one of them, here's an important question. In fact, it's a deep theological question. Are you ready to think for a moment? Here's the question. It's a pretty deep question, isn't it? Because we think, oh, it's just why. Can't be that deep. No, why is a deep question, right? Because why isn't asking why don't we do it? It's really asking why don't we do it? What's the thing that's there? What's the issue that's going on? And for some of us, I think we would say, listen, Mike, I haven't thought about it. I honestly haven't. I mean, I enjoy coming, I enjoy singing, I enjoy, listening, I enjoy kind of seeing the people, and I enjoy going home. I mean, that's kind of what going to church is, isn't it? So I haven't really thought much about it. And some of you might say, well, I have thought about it, but I just haven't gotten to it. It's been in my plans, but, I've been coming for a while, and I thought, after I've been here, 6 months I'll do something, but then, we got the summertime, and I'm in and out with vacations. So now what I'm thinking is like September or, well, let's be more accurate, probably more like January. But let's see, I'm going away this January. So maybe it's going to be like February, let's just say next summer, right? Or our answer would be, I'm not sure I need to. And some of us would say, I'm not sure I need to because we think somebody else will. Because of our past experience. Now, let me just go to that for a second. Some of you used to go to a different church, and that church needed your money. Correct? And you know how you know it needed your money? They talked about your money a lot. Like, all the time. Like they'd have during their worship service, somebody would stop up, come to a little platform and say, read a passage of scripture and say, today's offering is going for this. They'd have this explanation. They'd have prayer. They'd bring the money up. They'd have another prayer. They'd remind you again how important it was. They would talk about the needs, that the carpet needs replacing, that things need to be fixed, need to be repaired. They would go over and over and over. And here's what happened when you were at that church. You got tired of it, or maybe your spouse got tired of it always being about money because while they didn't want to make it about money, it was about money. And what you probably did was that you gave some money, hoping that giving some money would help fix this problem so it wasn't always about the money. But let's be honest, it kind of kept coming up because it was always about the money. And so you gave. You didn't give because you really committed to it. You just gave because apparently they have this huge need. And then at some point, you got tired of that. Now, you may not say that's the reason I left that church. I didn't leave because they were always after money, but it probably contributed to that experience. And here's what happened. You left that church that needed your money, and you came here. And when you came here, here's what you concluded. They, talking about New Hope, must not need my money because they hardly talk about it. In fact, you may be thinking, Mike, I've been coming for a few weeks. You never have talked about it. You never talk about taking up an offering. In fact, I've had to go ask somebody how I give. And it's like hard. It isn't like, before the pandemic, we used to pass around buckets. At least it was kind of like right there, right? Now you have to go find an envelope someplace, or you have to go online. You have to work at it. And I don't really want to work that hard to give away my money, Mike. So you've come to a church that never talks about money, so you assume we don't need your money. And here's the crazy, here's the thing that we all find ourselves challenged if that's your experience. You don't want to attend a church that needs your money because that just gets tiring, right? And why give to a church that doesn't seem to need your money? I mean, they already have money. Why would I give money to somebody who doesn't need it? And let me just talk about needing money for a moment. For those of you that are not regular givers, we don't need your money. Now, I know right now my finance committee is going, Mike, cut off the mic. Put on some music. Do something. Don't let him say those words. But I want to be honest with you. We don't need your money because there's people who love this church and care about this church. This church has done enough for them that they support us regularly. And we have, our bills paid. We have lights and electricity and papers and resources for you and for your kids. We have all that kind of stuff taken care of. We just, this year, we put on a brand new roof over this building. $150,000. But that was covered. It was covered from our reserves. It was covered from our budget. We didn't have to come tell you, listen, we have $150,000 and nobody's leaving this building until we get it paid. Play another song. Martha, here we go. So we don't need your money to do what we're currently doing. So your obvious question is this, right? Right? I mean, why talk about it if you don't need it? Let me ask you a what if. What if we need to give, not so the church will have enough money or people do things, but because of what it does to and for us? What if our challenge is that we get caught up in the whole idea of giving my money and what's it going to do and forget what it does to us? See, Jesus had this great statement that is actually the opposite of how we typically think. And he dropped it in. He was in his big sermon on this big long sermon, this big opening sermon he did over in Matthew chapter 6. And it comes at the end of the section when he talks about this idea of giving and how we treat the things we have, the stuff that we have, our possessions. And at the end of that whole discussion, he simply says these words: your heart and my heart will be where our treasure is. Period. Now, normally we think, no. Where our heart is, there our treasure will follow, right? I mean, I knew when my youngest son, who's much like one of his parents, and how fiscally responsible he is, I knew he had fallen in love when he started to spend money on this girl. Because that's how it follows, right? You know, your heart goes there and your treasure follows. But Jesus says, hold it here. While that's how it works sort of in lots of things, there's a flip way you can do it. There's a choice you can make that not only is you get passionate about this and your money falls. You know, you get passionate about some sport, you begin to buy all the equipment. You get passionate about some hobby and you begin to spend all this money. He says, wait. You can also get passionate by choosing where you put your resources at. That your heart will follow where your stuff goes. Let's just go back where he starts with this. Because again, if you've been around a place like this, you've heard this passage before, right? Jesus' great statement. He says, listen, don't store treasures for yourself here on earth. To which when you read that, we ought to be thinking, where else would I store my stuff, right? I mean, if it's not here on earth, it's not like we have places on the moon or in Mars yet to store all this stuff. Everybody wants talking about that. No. It's like, what do you mean don't store my stuff here on earth? But Jesus says there's a reason for it. He says, because moths and rust will destroy them and thieves can break in and steal them. And you have to remember, in Jesus' context, their lives were nothing like your life or my life. They didn't have these big homes. They didn't have apartments to go to. They typically, where they lived was a one-room spot. Their kitchen was in there. Their bedroom was in there. Their living room was in there. Their little quiet spot, their little man cave was over here. But it was all part of one room. And they had three ways of storing their wealth. It was through precious metals, gold and silver, something they could put and kind of hide. They had it through spices, right? Whether it was, a spice in its dry form or in like a perfume, that was a valuable thing. Or in their clothes. They didn't have a sweet chariot and a second chariot out in the driveway. They didn't have any of that stuff. So when Jesus says, listen, don't store for yourself treasures here on this earth where all the stuff can damage that. Most of the people were like, we don't have anything to damage, Jesus. Most people didn't have more than one change of clothes. Do you know that? It wasn't like us where we have closets where like we go through a couple times a year and throw out the stuff that we haven't worn, but we keep the stuff that we think maybe we will wear. And maybe it'll come back around fashion again because we've never worn it. But then Jesus says, listen, he says, don't do it because stuff can destroy it and it just sits there and it'll be gone. But he says, Store your treasures in heaven, which I'm going to be honest with you, I have no idea what that means. I mean, how do I can't get my car from here to there. I can't get my clothes from here to there. I can't get my bank account from here to there. But what if Jesus isn't talking just about, the actual where it goes, but actually how we use it, and that impacts where it goes. See, but store for yourself treasure in heaven, where none of these things, bad things can happen. They can't be destroyed by the moths and rust, that thieves can't break in and steal them because they can't get into heaven. And then he drops that line again, your heart will be where your treasure is. And he's telling us something really important, that if we put our stuff, if we've used our stuff for a greater, bigger good than just keeping it there and keeping it safe, that has an impact on our lives. In fact, I love how Eugene Peterson, when he translated this version for his kids, how he put it. He said, the place where your treasure is the place where you will most want to be and where you're going to end up being. And I think he captures what Jesus is talking about there, about the power that we have and the power that things in our lives has on us. See, the truth is, the struggle and tension we all face is what will be the thing that drives, moves, and motivates us. And there are things in your life, there are things in my life that drive, that move, that motivate us, that are about the things that our heart has gone after, that we're passionate about. But sometimes we find a struggle with those things. And here's something you have discovered at some point in life, that the struggle, the more stuff we have, the more complicated it gets. Have you noticed that? It's why these people have created this wonderful thing called storage units. Because when you can't fit it where you live, you put it someplace else. Because it's so easily accessible there, isn't it? How many of you, let's just do a quick survey. How many of you have ever discovered something you thought, I forgot I had that. How many? Right away. Right? How many of you have ever bought this? So, guys, I'm going to talk to you for a second. You have tools, right? How many of you know you have the tool someplace, but you can't find that tool? And you go out and buy another one? And then you discover the other two that you'd already bought before? Anybody else with me on that? It gets complicated, right? And then we got to insure all this stuff, and we have to protect all this stuff. And for some of those things, when it just sits there, there's the chance for people to steal it, to it to fall apart, for it to rust out, and all those things that Jesus talked about. And what happens is the more stuff we get, our wants are harder to define. Now, a lot of us, when we started out, it was like a struggle to survive, right? You kind of live paycheck to paycheck. And then you kind of move past that, and the things that were like needs now become kind of wants, and they become hard to find. And the problem is not only do they become harder to find, but they become easier to confuse. And what if? What if it's not about having stuff, but how we handle our stuff? See, I don't think Jesus is saying you shouldn't have stuff. I just think he says need to be careful how we handle that stuff. Because how we handle that stuff influences how we feel in here and in here. And what if, just go off what Jesus said, what if we really can choose, we really can influence what our hearts are drawn to? What if we have that power and we've forgotten we have that power? That it's not just, I'm passionate about this, now everything goes. What if it's also about, if I put it this way, I'm going to get passionate about this. It's going to have more meaning to me because that's where my money's going. And let me say it one more time back to where we were at a few minutes ago. This isn't about the church needing our time and our money. We clear on that? It's really about this. It's about our need. It's about what it does to us and for us and in us. See, the church functions. The church functions because of people like you. And not just like you, but also the people that are around you. That's how this thing operates. We don't operate because we have 5 pastors. We operate because we have lots of people who volunteer, lots of people who give of their time and energy, not just on a Saturday or a Sabbath morning, but also like through the week. There are people that do lots of stuff behind the scenes that you never see, but you are so thankful that they've done it. And we function as well as we do because people who've discovered it's about what happens in and through us when we give and serve. People who've discovered these things, they discover that it's not just about welcoming somebody, but making them feel welcomed. That the person, when you come in the door, isn't just about giving you a bulletin and saying, welcome, welcome, welcome. No, it's more than that. It's about making somebody feel welcome. It's not just about our worship team, right? It's not just about sounding good as they sing, but helping us engage with God. It's not just about keeping kids occupied, but helping them in their faith journey. It's not just about taking care of babies, but giving them a safe place so that the parents can listen and worship knowing their kids are okay. And giving their kids, that time, and giving the parents that time. It's not just about being known for doing good in the community, but being good to our community. And it's not just about going to church, but about experiencing God in church. See, this church functions as well as it does because it's about people who believe you can have a good time even at church. And that's important. And it's important to think about how important this church is to you. And what are the ways that you can help keep it important in your life? Paul, who was not one of Jesus' original followers, but is a guy who comes along later and wrote a lot of things. In fact, he's probably the biggest influence on Christianity outside of Jesus because of all the stuff he wrote. He wrote the majority of the part of the Bible we call the New Testament. And he has this thing about giving money specifically. And in fact, if you read the context, he's writing to some people and saying, hey, I'm going to send some people to collect some money from you because we're trying to help out this other group of Christians over here, and it's really important. And I know you want to help out, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to actually send some people that you can actually follow through with what you want to do. And then he drops this statement that you don't have to be religious for this to make sense because this is just a way that life works thing. He says these words. He says, listen, remember, the person who plants a little will have a small harvest. The person who sows sparingly will reap sparingly, which makes sense, right? If I'm only going to plant 5 seeds, how many plants can I get? At most 5, right? I may only get 3 or 2, right? So if I'm real, I know I can't really afford not. If I put a little bit, you can't reap more than you've sowed. But he says, the person who plants a lot, who sows generously, will have a big harvest, who will reap generously. Now, this is not some sort of giving scheme that I'm going to lay out for you. This is not give us $100 and you're going to get $1,000 back. This isn't send me something and I'll sneeze on it and you will be blessed for the rest of your life. I don't buy all that stuff. But I do buy is that God has put in all of our hands, whether you're a follower of his or not, whether you recognize him or not, but especially if we recognize him, that he's put in with us the power within our hands to recognize that there is no return without risk. That if we just put a little bit out there and expect a lot, we're fooling ourselves. Life doesn't work that way. The ecological system doesn't work that way. But in order to get more, you have to put more in it. And then Paul, he kind of puts a statement in it, and I'm guessing this was just a common understanding that people understood, that, hey, this is how it works in life. And then he makes some great statements about giving. Here's what he says. Each of you should give as you have decided in your heart to give. Which simply means you and I needed to figure out what we're going to give. We don't need somebody else telling me, give me this percentage or that percentage. We don't need anybody else saying, I need X amount of dollars. You need to decide within yourself. And I think he says in our heart, because this is about what's valuable. In fact, I think when Paul writes this, he's thinking about what Jesus said. That where our heart is, there are our treasure's going to be. And Paul's saying, don't forget that. Because if you decide in your heart where you want it, this is to get your heart there, you have to decide where you're going to put it. Then he makes this incredible statement. He says, listen, you should not give reluctantly. Which some of you are thinking right now, well, Mike, if I did that, I would never give any money. I mean, if we're being honest, right? Because some of us are wired that way, that anytime I give, that's like, oh, it hurts. But don't give reluctantly, he says. And you should not give because you feel forced to give, out of compulsion. Have you ever been to one of those fundraisers where they begin to work the room? And if you're a person that has some money, you don't want to be at that moment, because they'll come over and they'll pick you out of the crowd. And they'll make you feel really bad, and like you have to make some offering, because it's like, hey, Dr. So-and-so, right? Have this huge practice. Everybody in this area knows you. What are you going to bid? And they work up the crowd, and they work on it. Paul says, that's not the way to do this. That has nothing to do with a faith-based organization. You want to give as you've decided within yourself. Not because you're feeling forced, not because you're being pushed into it. And then he drops this line at the end, which sounds so weird when he writes it. He says, oh, by the way, God loves the person who gives happily, who gives cheerfully. To again, some of us are wired like, no, he can't. Because there can't be anybody that gives happily and cheerfully, right? But what if? What if it's possible to be happy giving our time and money? And wouldn't it make us happy to know that we're doing it for some organization, some group that we really value? Isn't it happy to know that we're contributing to something more than ourselves, that's bigger than ourselves, that's making a bigger difference than we can make by ourselves? See, what if God doesn't want to take our money? Man, I thought I'd get an amen out of that one. What if God doesn't want to take our money? What if he just doesn't want our money to take us? Yes, yeah, no, we're getting good, right? Finally getting good. Here to the end, Mike's finally said something worthwhile, right? But sometimes we forget, because we think it's our money and it's our time. And I work hard, and so I deserve to take a break. And I work hard for this money, so I deserve to use my money how I want to use it. But what if God knows something more about how we see our possessions and money than we do? And what if Jesus was right? That wherever we put our treasure at, there our heart's going to be. And if our money is just kept in a bank account, we're going to be stuck in that spot. See, what if this is about wanting something for us rather than something from us? Because I think it is. So here's how I'm going to end today. I want to encourage you, those of you that do not regularly give, do not regularly support, do not regularly, serve in some spot, I want to encourage you to help keep this church you love to attend, the church you love to attend. And you can do that by coming up with a plan to give back financially and servingly. And I know servingly is not a word, but you know what it is, right? And I say that not to put pressure on you, because here's the reality. Whether you do that or not, we're going to continue doing what we do. This is not about, I need you to step up so we can do that. No, we're going to keep doing what we need to do. But wouldn't it feel good to know that you're contributing to the thing that you love and care about? That you're helping make it what it is, and maybe even making it better than it currently is. And I want to say something. If you're part of our online community, I'm including you in this as well. And this is not like we're going to make this big push now that every week you're going to be hit with all this stuff. Give here or there. That's not our approach. That's not what we think is true and right. But I do have the same belief that if you've benefited from it, you ought to participate in it. And there's a reason for that, so that we can continue to be the church you like, that you enjoy, that you love. So again, online folks, you're going to hear some stuff from Pastor Casper in the coming weeks and months about not just about giving, but also about serving, how you can serve in your local community, just like we're doing here, that we can team up together and do some things. Because we know that we've made a difference in life, and you consider us your church, and so we want you to be part of that church. So again, if you have benefited from it, I want to invite you to participate in it, so that we can continue to be a church you love to attend,